Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophets Speak. Today we begin our study of Proverbs, Sefer Mishlei, chapter 19, Perek Yud Tes. Tov Rosh Holech, let's get right into it. Tov Rosh Holech Bitumo. Better is a pauper or a poor person who is honest, and Holech bitumo is someone that goes bitamut with it's almost a good kind of naivete, a person that does the right thing because it's right, a person that walks bitamut. Of course, those that are familiar would know this is first used in reference to Noah, who is Holech tamim, and Abraham, who went to Tam, who walked in the proper path, bitamut, with simplicity and perfection. That is better, me'ikesh tfasav, than someone who lies, v'hu ksil, and therefore is a fool. So it's better to go with someone who is simple-minded but straight than to go with someone who might be intelligent but is a liar. Gam below das nefesh lo tov. However, although it is true that is good, what is better, you should remember, this is verse 2, that without knowledge, in other words, the pauper was giving the impression of someone that doesn't have necessarily the privilege of das, of knowledge and wisdom, but at least he's honest, right? However, without knowledge, their soul is not in a good place. It is better to be honest and have knowledge. And furthermore, v'otz b'raglayim, if you rush with your feet, if you rush into something too fast without thinking about what you're doing and why, and try to understand what the proper response should be, chotei is a person who will sin. If you rush too much into something without thinking about it first, you're setting yourself up for failure. Iveles adam tisalef darko. The foolishness of people leads them in the wrong direction. And this is why, he's explaining in verse 3, why in verse 2 we stated that it's better to be a person with knowledge than to be a simple person that is honest, who is of course better than a lying, cheating fool. But Ivelas Adam, the foolishness of a person, when a person does not have knowledge, Tisalef Darko, it leads you on the wrong path. I just told you, if you rush too much without thinking about it, you may end up in the wrong place. But if you have knowledge, right, then you might find the right place. But a person who does not have knowledge, right, who is foolish, he's going to potentially get himself into a situation where he will bring anger to God. Hon Yosif Reim Rabim. This verse we've had, if you look back in chapter 14, verse 20, we had a similar thought, and in other places, that wealth gets you a lot of friends. These are, of course, very superficial friends, which we will see soon, right? But a person who is poor, and here it doesn't use the term rush. The term rush, which we used in the beginning of the chapter, it means poor, but it means someone who is poor not just in wealth, but just a simple person. Dal here is specifically a person who is poor in wealth, right? Parade, all of his friends he will be separated from. His friends will go running the other direction, because no one wants to be friends with a poor guy. Everyone wants to be friends with the rich guy. How many people do you know brag about being friends with the homeless guy on the corner? Not too many. But how many people brag about being friends with so-and-so, the rich guy, and so on? Lots. Eid shikarim lo yinakeh. However, we know how much people want to be friends with the rich guy, right? And what do people often do to become friends with the rich guy? They lie. They make up stories in order to get in to the in club. However, a person who is a false witness, who lies and cheats, often with the intention, with the purpose in mind of joining the wealthy club, lo yinakeh, he's not going to go off clean. It's not going to work out for him. Eventually, he's going to suffer for his lies. V'yafiach kisavim lo yimaleit. A person that's constantly repeating lies, he will not be saved. His lies will eventually catch up with him. Rabbi Michalu Pnei Nadiv. Everybody wants to court the favor of the guy who is generous. Right? If you want to buy friends, it's easy to find people that are going to come and tell you how great you are. Everybody is friends when somebody is giving out money and presents, right? However, on the other hand, kol achei rosh, and this time it uses the term rosh, all of the brothers of the person who is impoverished, sina'ehu, they hate him. They don't pay attention to him. They don't spend time with him. Afki mere'ehu rachaku mimenu, even though how much more so, or even as their friends go away and run away from him, miradef amorim, as he chases them with words, in other words, and tries to say, hey, you're my old friend, you're my brother, you're my cousin, right? Lo hema, and this is the word lo here. There's a kriya and a ktiv here. The way it is, the lo could be with an aleph, which would means they are not his, which would then be translated as miradef amorim. He chases them with words, and lo hema, but the friends don't stay anyway, because no one wants to stay with him because he's poor, even though he has what to say, he has what to share with them, he has relationships with them. Lo hema. Or it could be miradef amorim, someone who tries to make friends with words. Lo hema. Those words remain with him, they stay with him, they don't get spread to others because he's poor. There's other ways of translating that, but that would be the simplest level. Konelev, however, even though it's true that we just said these past few verses, how much people chase after being friends with the wealthy and run away being friends with the poor. So if you're going to spend your life trying to be friends with everyone and being a maradef amarim lohim, you're not, it's not going to work out for you. If you really want to be within your heart, konelev ohev nafsho, a person who acquires his heart, that is a person who truly loves his soul. You need to find happiness within yourself. If you're looking for happiness because of acquiring friends and you try to buy them with money, it's not going to work. Shomer Tavuna, a person who guards true understanding, limtso tov, that's the person who finds good. That's the person who finds true good. That's the person who finds what we often would call today true happiness within his own soul, within his own heart. Eid Shikarim, and then it reminds us again, kind of rounding out the thoughts of what we just learned. Eid Shikarim lo yinakat. A person who is constantly saying lies, he'll never get away with it. V'yafiach kesovim yoved. And this, it's almost the same exact verse as verse 5, with one difference, that at the end it says, one who repeats lies, yoved, will be destroyed. Last time it ended, lo yimaleit, he will not escape. In other words, those lies will catch up with him. And now it says it even stronger. It reminds you that not only will it catch up with him, when it catches up with him, it will be his end. Lo navet, this verse, let's see verse 10, lo navel exil tanog. It is not good to give a person who is a fool pleasure. What does that mean? It means a person who is a fool, who doesn't understand how to use wealth and the various pleasures that this world gives him. It's not good for him because he's going to use it in a bad way, which helps us understand the second half of this verse. Afki la'eved mishol b'sarim. It is also not good, because this happens often when we see an eved, a person who was previously enslaved, when he suddenly becomes the ruler over his previous lords. Now, obviously, in the movies, that sounds like a great thing, and in a way of justice, it does seem great. However, if you really look at these words carefully, you understand what this verse is teaching us. It says, it doesn't say that there's a problem that when a servant becomes, gets elevated in position and gets out of the position of servitude. That's fine. That's good. But mishol bisarim, when he rules hard over the people who in other words, he flips. He goes from being the eved, being subservient to others and being abused by others, and when he rises, he goes back and abuses others. He's mishol b'sarim, not among the sarim. That would be fine. But when he starts to rule over them, that's when you have a problem. And that's the problem of a ksil tanug. When you give a fool, a person without knowledge, pleasures, right? It's not good because he doesn't know what to do with it. If this eved was not a ksil, if he was not a fool, if he was smart, he would understand that kind of revenge, doing the same thing to others that was done to him, just goes round and round and round and gets everybody nowhere. Seichel Adam He'erich Apo. A person who is smart is a person who is patient. Right? That is, again, this is following the verse 10, right, which we just said. Right? A person who is smart realizes that even though I'm angry about how I was treated, I still think before how I act towards others. Visifarto, and it is his glory. It is it is a compliment to him. It is a wonderful a glory to him. Avor al pesha, when he forgives sin, when he overlooks what was done, when he moves up in life and he doesn't use his newfound wealth, his newfound position to take revenge, but he uses that to say, you know what, I forgive, and thus move the world and his circles forward. Naham kakfir zaf amelach. The anger of a king, you have to be careful when you get into the position of being a king or being in charge. Because the anger of a king is like the roar of a lion. It scares people. People run. People suffer. Ukatal aleisev ritzono. And when he gives out favor, it is like dew. It helps others. You have to understand the responsibility of positions of responsibility. You have to understand that your anger affects other people in bad ways. And what you do good affects other people in good ways. You have to recognize that. Don't use it for revenge. Havos la'aviv ben ksil. A father who has a son who is a fool is a havos. It's a calamity. It's a terrible occurrence. V'delef toreid midinei isha. And when one has a wife who is constantly pushing in the wrong direction, this is often translated as a nagging wife. It's like dripping water. It's coming home and constantly getting dripped with negativity, constantly getting poked and prodded with pushing you in the wrong direction. Bias vahon nachalas avos, right? People can inherit from their fathers, right? A house, they can inherit wealth. How that in other words, a person can give someone else physical wealth. You can inherit to your children. You can buy it, sell it, give it. However, having the right wife, having the right spouse, that is me'adonai. That comes from God. Isha maskelas, a woman who maskelas has a lot of meanings. In this context, it really means as a wife who helps one be successful. Companions in life that helps one move in the right direction. That is a special gift from God. Atzla, laziness, tapel tardema, just puts one into a deep sleep. It gets you nowhere. The tardema leads to nowhere. V'nefesh remia, however, a soul that lies, tirav, makes one hungry. If you constantly try to get where you want to get in life through lying, through fooling others, it's going to catch up to you one day. So that concludes verse 15. That would be the first half of chapter 19. Thank you so much for studying this together with me. Looking forward to finishing chapter 19 together and, of course, finishing this beautiful, wonderful book of Mishlei. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.